I'm Droolbatz. It's so nice to see you. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 2018 horror film Seven in Heaven. I'm going to be discussing it based on its premise, its production value and artistic choices, and finally how it compares or contrasts to other films of the genre. I hope you enjoy. Nerdy but likable high school student Jude is invited to a house party. One of his friends is moving away, so the house is like empty of the furniture, and his parents happen to be away, so they're throwing like a big kind of a last hurrah there. Jude kind of gets goaded into playing like a card game that's kind of like 7 Minutes in Heaven type thing by a school bully. He ends up having to go into this closet with this girl. The closet was in the back of his friend's parents' walk-in closet, so the friend didn't know it was there. It's like a mini closet inside a closet. After 7 minutes spent in the closet, Jude and the girl emerge, ready to go back to the party, when they realize something is very, very different. They are at a party, sure, it's the same house, but everything is different. The people don't seem to like them or know them that well, and there's some weird commotion going on outside. They are not in the same dimension that they were when they went into the closet. Also, Jude's being accused of murder. Chekov has joined us for this next segment. At about 94 minutes, Seven in Heaven is the average length that you'd expect for a horror movie about teenagers and their shenanigans. Seven in Heaven was a visually satisfying movie overall. A lot of the elements that made it stand out to me were very subtle. For example, a lot of movies shot in the digital era on digital equipment tend to have a more subtle color palette, like more subdued, I guess would be the word, and they tend to not have a lot of light and dark contrast. I think this might just be like an overall aesthetic trend, because I notice it's very popular on Instagram and people who do Snapchats and stuff nowadays. That said, that kind of color desaturation is very popular in movies right now. This movie, it felt modern in that the colors were satisfying. They were kind of subtle, but they were rich at the same time, very full. It was a very like subtle difference, so it still felt like modern, but it stood out a little in that way. There was a lot of really good shot variety in this movie. It was not in any way stagnant. There were a lot of really far shots and a lot of really close shots. Overall, the movie was really well composed visually. The movie utilized some really different lighting filters to kind of signify subtle shifts, hello Chekov, in the mood or the atmosphere of the movie. It was subtle, but it was noticeable, and it just kind of made everything feel very intentional. And it signified the changes in the characters' emotions and kind of what was supposed to be going on without being super heavy-handed about it. It felt very intuitive and very natural, and it just made the movie feel very thoughtful. As far as the writing goes, the way that the characters were portrayed, I thought, was kind of typical of a lot of movies that focus on like high schoolers who want to party. The characters were typical, but ultimately most of them were likable, except for like the bully and such. There was not initially a lot of depth to them, but most of them were kind of revealed to be a little bit more deep than other characters in other teen-oriented movies. I thought probably the best character, at least as far as like characterization went, was Jude's mom. She didn't have a big role in the movie, but just the way she was written was, I thought, the most realistic. A lot of movies with teenagers and young people, they tend to kind of like push the really like the cool mom agenda, you know, like, oh, I'm the cool mom, and like I'm very progressive and blah blah blah, and it, you know, I know some progressive moms, of course, and you know, most of them aren't the way that movies make them seem, or they like really push like the kind of like the worrywart, conservative, overly involved mom, and I mean that's real for some people, but overall This mom really walked the fine line, so it didn't feel like it was like a satire of a mom. It just felt like a realistic mother. The set was very rich and immersive. We got to see a lot of the world that Jude and the girl were in originally. We see Jude's house, we see their school, we see the house party, and then we saw a lot of the world too, the alternate world. We see that Jude's bedroom, we see his house, we see the party again, we see the inside of the closet, we see them running around outside at night. It just really emphasized the fact that they were in a different world, not just a different setting. There were a few points where there was a really, really cheap kind of special effect filter that I thought kind of detracted from the overall intentional subtlety of the rest of the movie's visual elements, but it wasn't too bad. It was noticeably bad in the moment, but I don't think it's something that'll be super memorable as you move past the movie. This movie was a Blumhouse production, and I really like Blumhouse productions, so I was excited when I started this movie, and I think altogether it really lived up to the quality of movies produced by Blumhouse. Now I'm going to be discussing how this film stands apart from or blends into other films of the genre. I will be spoiling parts of this movie, so if you don't want me to spoil it, it was lovely having you. Please take this as your cue to go watch it for yourself. Jude in the real world, was a very good kid. He sometimes was a bit lazy, but altogether people liked him even if he was kind of like an uncool guy. In this other world, however, the people who are his friends totally shun him. He doesn't really seem to have many friends. When Jude gets to the bedroom of his house in this alternate world, he discovers that alternate Jude is some kind of freaky social outcast who might be part of some kind of satanic cult. Jude is very freaked out. The police are after him, his parents are after him, his alternate parents. He's convinced that somehow if he gets back to the closet, then he can, and if he stays in there for 7 more minutes, he can get back to the real world. His friends back in his natural world realize that he's missing, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. Where did this closet come from? What the heck happened to Jude? Also, the police show up at their house for a party, so they're trying to deal with that. There's just a lot going on. And the race is on, of course, because Jude could be arrested in this alternate reality for committing a crime that he didn't really commit. As far as the premise goes, of course, the whole notion of going into another dimension in like some way that you didn't even know was possible or existed is a common one. It's a very common theme in a lot of youth-oriented movies, so in that way, it's not particularly unique. The way that this movie kind of stepped off the beaten path was the murder accusation element of this movie. Most movies and things that I've seen about like a mirrored universe are usually more just about discovering the universe and then trying to get back home kind of and figuring out that. And of course that was part of this movie, but this movie also had this urgency sense in that Jude had to work against the alternate him and other elements like that. The notion that he could be evil in another world and so unliked if he just made a few wrong decisions, I think is very haunting. And then of course the fact that the police are literally after him was very, it kind of added another layer of depth to this film, I would say. This movie had a lot of puzzle-like elements that Jude discovered, involving like a playing card here, the mysterious closet here, a mysterious principal from his school randomly appearing, things like that. So it kind of gave the movie kind of, like a puzzle discovery journey type of a movie vibe. It also made it seem like there was a lot going on depth-wise, but I found that kind of cluttered up what they were trying to say with this story. It also, unfortunately, all those little small like sub-elements lent itself to kind of a confusing ending. I thought the movie did a decent job of trying to explain what was going on, but then it kind of fell flat when it actually came to explaining how they are trying to get back home and the significance of that. This was a straight to Netflix type of production. And Netflix movies, I've noticed, like straight to Netflix movies lately, have been having a lot of like the ending is up to you kind of vague endings that honestly don't leave me extremely satisfied. The Open House, starring that kid from 13 Reasons Why, is another example. That movie was very solid, in my opinion. It followed a very traditional, like, someone stalking us type of story. And then the ending was just, what? You know, I had to look it up to be like, did that just happen? What? And it was just a very abrupt ending. There was another movie that was another straight to Netflix film called, I think it's The Ritual. That one was very much like it followed a traditional path, and then suddenly the ending was really vague. It's unclear how that happened. I thought The Ritual was a little bit more clear than both Seven in Heaven and The Open House in explaining what was going on, but it was still kind of this not fully formed ending. And I think that vague endings that are open to interpretation can be really good sometimes, but there's just been a lot of them lately that have not fully been up to par, in my opinion. And they've all been featured on Netflix. So I'm starting to wonder if Netflix is like intentionally making movies that don't end conclusively, so then you immediately have to try to look it up online, and then that makes it look like there's a lot of search hits or something. So in that way, I did not like the movie. It felt like part of a ploy by Netflix. Altogether, if I had to rate this movie, I would give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I was really impressed with the production value, and visually it was a treat to watch. The plot just had too many things going on, just too many elements going on to make it a cohesive and clear story, and how do I say this? I didn't like the ending, and it made sense, but it didn't make sense at the same time. I thought that the movie really lent itself to a potential sequel if they wanted to, the way that they left the ending, but I feel like if you don't conclude the movie in a solid enough way, why would you make a sequel? You know what I mean? Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts though. Did you like how it ended if you have seen it? If you have not, what's your opinion on Netflix's vague conclusion streak? Let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear what you have to say. I'd love your insights if you can let us know what the heck you think was going on with that ending. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this review was enjoyable and helpful to you, and I don't know, I hope you liked it. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and please consider subscribing if you haven't already. I make horror movie reviews on this channel, so if you like those, this might be the place for you. Alright, thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.